First Contact and the Galactic Academy. The vast expanse of space had never felt so small to Sarah Chen as she stood before the towering gates of the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy. The iridescent force field shimmered with an otherworldly glow, a constant reminder that she was light years away from Earth. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand tightening around the strap of her duffel bag. This was it, humanity's first steps into a larger universe. As the gates parted with a low hum, Sarah stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. The academy grounds stretched out before her, a breathtaking blend of advanced technology and alien architecture. Hovering vehicles zipped by overhead, while beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors milled about on the ground. Some walked on tentacles, others floated on cushions of air, and still others moved in ways that defied human comprehension. A holographic guide materialized beside her, its translucent form flickering slightly. "Welcome, Cadet Chen," it said in a melodious voice. "Please proceed to the orientation hall." Sarah nodded, trying to mask her nervousness as she made her way through the crowd. She could feel the stares of alien cadets boring into her, a mix of curiosity and skepticism in their gazes. Humans were new to the galactic stage, and their reputation preceded them. The orientation hall was a massive amphitheater, filled with thousands of alien cadets. Sarah found a seat near the back, acutely aware of the empty spaces around her. A holographic figure appeared on the stage, its form shifting between various alien species. "Greetings, cadets," the figure boomed. "Welcome to the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy. You represent the finest your species have to offer, chosen to maintain peace and order across the cosmos." The figure's gaze seemed to linger on Sarah for a moment. "This year, we welcome our newest members, the humans of Earth, a species from a world classified as a death world, known for its extreme environmental conditions and dangerous flora and fauna." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah felt her cheeks burn as nearby aliens turned to stare at her again. "Your training will push you to your limits and beyond," the hologram continued. "You will face challenges that will test not only your physical abilities but your mental fortitude as well. Your first test begins tomorrow on the ice world of Glacius Prime." Images of a harsh, frozen landscape filled the air above the stage. Blizzards raged across barren tundras, and jagged ice formations stretched towards a gray sky. Sarah heard gasps and worried whispers from the aliens around her, but she felt a small smile tugging at her lips. It reminded her of winters in Alaska, where she had spent much of her youth. As the orientation concluded, Sarah made her way to her assigned quarters. She shared a room with 3 other cadets, a serpentine slick named Zix, a floating gas bag Vern called Blip, and a crystalline quartz being named Prism. "So, you're the human," Zix said, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "I heard your world is full of predators that could swallow me whole." Sarah chuckled nervously. "Well, we do have some big animals, but most of them aren't interested in eating aliens." Blip bobbed in the air, his translucent body changing colors rapidly. "Is it true that your people voluntarily expose themselves to extreme temperatures for fun?" "You mean like saunas and ice baths?" "Yeah, some people enjoy that," Sarah replied. Prism's crystalline form shimmered with curiosity. "Fascinating. And you think you can survive on Glacius Prime?" Sarah shrugged. "I guess we'll find out tomorrow. But I've dealt with pretty harsh winters before. It can't be that bad, right?" Her roommates exchanged glances, a mix of doubt and intrigue in their alien expressions. The next morning, Sarah and her fellow cadets were transported to the surface of Glacius Prime. As she stepped out of the shuttle, the biting cold hit her like a physical force. The wind howled around them, driving needle-sharp ice crystals into any exposed skin. Sarah zipped up her thermal suit, grateful for the advanced technology that kept the worst of the cold at bay. Around her, alien cadets were already shivering and huddling together for warmth. A gruff-looking alien with thick, leathery skin and 4 arms stomped towards them. "Listen up, cadets," he bellowed over the wind. I'm Sergeant Krogak, and I'll be overseeing your survival training. Your task is simple. Make it to the research station 50 kilometers north of here. You have 3 days. Use whatever means necessary to survive. But remember, this is a team exercise. You either all make it or none of you do. Sarah looked around at her team. Zix, Blip, Prism, and 2 others she didn't recognize. One was a furry creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a squid, while the other seemed to be made entirely of living metal. "Well," Sarah said, forcing cheerfulness into her voice, "shall we get moving?" The metal being, who introduced himself as Pharaoh, gave her a look that might have been skepticism. "You seem awfully calm, human. This weather would kill most species in hours." Sarah shrugged, already starting to walk north. "It's not so bad. Reminds me of home, actually. Come on, we've got a long way to go." As they trudged through the snow, Sarah couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement. This was why she had joined the academy. To push herself, to explore, to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. And if that meant braving a little cold, well, she was more than up for the challenge. Little did Sarah know, this was just the beginning. The true tests of Glacius Prime were yet to come, and they would push her and her alien teammates to their very limits. But with each step through the howling wind and biting cold, Sarah Chen was about to show the galaxy exactly what humans were made of. The survival challenge begins. As the team trudged through the knee-deep snow, the alien cadets quickly realized that their human companion, Sarah Chen, was not just keeping up. She was leading the way. The biting wind that had the others hunching and shivering seemed to barely faze her as she forged ahead, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon. How are you doing this?" gasped Zix, the slick's serpentine body coiling tightly to conserve heat. His scales had taken on a dull, frosted appearance, a far cry from their usual iridescent sheen. Sarah glanced back, concern etching her features. "Are you okay, Zix? Do you need to rest?" The slick's tongue flicked out, tasting the frigid air. I think so. But you haven't answered my question, human. How are you so unaffected?" Sarah slowed her pace, allowing the others to catch up. "I wouldn't say I'm unaffected," she admitted, her breath forming small clouds in the air. "It's definitely cold. But I grew up in a place not too different from this. You learn to push through it, to focus on other things." Blip, the Vern, bobbed unsteadily in the air, his gaseous form contracting in the cold. What other things could possibly matter in this frozen wasteland? A small smile played on Sarah's lips. "Well, for starters, finding shelter. Look there." She pointed to a formation of ice and rock jutting out from the endless white expanse. "That outcropping might offer some protection from the wind. We should head that way." As they approached the formation, Prism's crystalline body began to resonate with the surrounding ice, creating an eerie, beautiful harmony. "Fascinating. The quartz being hummed. The molecular structure here is unlike anything I've encountered." Sarah nodded, her gloved hand running along the smooth surface of the ice. "It's beautiful, isn't it? But beauty can be deadly out here. We need to be careful." The furry bear squid creature, who had introduced himself as Grok, rumbled in agreement. "Yes, careful. Ice slippery, dangerous, but also useful." With surprising dexterity for his bulk, Grok began to scoop snow and pack it against the side of the outcropping, slowly forming a crude wall. Sarah's eyes lit up. "Grok, that's brilliant. We can build a snow shelter here. It'll protect us from the wind and help retain our body heat." For the next hour, the team worked together to construct a simple igloo-like structure. Sarah guided them, showing how to pack the snow tightly and create a small entrance that would keep out the worst of the cold. As they worked, she explained the principles behind it, how snow was actually an excellent insulator when properly used. Pharaoh, the living metal being, watched with growing interest. "I must admit, human, Your species continues to surprise me. I had not expected such practical knowledge from Deathworlders. Sarah chuckled as she patted down another block of snow. We may be from a death world, but that just means we've had to learn how to survive in all sorts of conditions. It's not about being the strongest or the toughest. It's about adapting, using your environment to your advantage. As night fell and the temperature dropped even further, the team huddled inside their makeshift shelter. The difference was immediately noticeable. Out of the wind, with their bodies close together, it was almost comfortable. I can't believe it, Zix marveled, his scales regaining some of their luster in the relative warmth. We might actually survive this. Sarah smiled, but her expression remained serious. We've done well today, but this is just the beginning. We've got a long way to go, and Glacius Prime isn't going to make it easy for us. As if in response to her words, a low, haunting howl echoed across the frozen landscape. The alien cadets tensed, their various physiologies registering fear in a multitude of ways. What was that? Blip quivered, his gaseous form rippling with anxiety. Sarah's hand instinctively went to the multi-tool at her belt. I don't know, but we better be prepared for anything. Remember, we're not just surviving the cold. We're in an alien ecosystem. There could be predators out there that make Earth's wolves look like puppies. The night passed fitfully, with the team taking turns keeping watch. Sarah used the time to assess their supplies and plan their route for the next day. As the first light of Glacius Prime's distant sun began to peek over the horizon, she roused her teammates. We need to get moving, she said, her voice low but firm. The station is still a long way off, and we don't want to be caught out in the open when night falls again. As they emerged from their shelter, a collective gasp rose from the group. The landscape had transformed overnight. What had been an endless expanse of white was now a glittering wonderland of ice crystals, refracting the light of the rising sun into 1,000 rainbow hues. For a moment, even Sarah was struck speechless by the beauty. But she quickly shook herself out of it, reminding herself of the dangers that lurked beneath the stunning surface. It's gorgeous, she admitted, but don't let it distract you. Ice like this can be treacherous. Watch your step, and stay close together. As they set out, picking their way carefully across the glittering terrain, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her team. Despite their initial doubts and the harsh conditions, they were adapting, learning, working together. It was a small step, but an important one, proof that different species, from vastly different worlds, could come together and overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. But as another howl echoed in the distance, closer this time, Sarah knew that their true test was yet to come. Glacius Prime had more in store for them, and she had a feeling that before long, she would need to draw on every ounce of her human resilience and ingenuity to keep her team alive. The ice crunched beneath their feet as they pressed on, the research station a distant goal on the horizon. With each step, Sarah felt the weight of her responsibility, not just to her team, but to humanity itself. This was their chance to prove they belonged among the stars, to show that the lessons learned on their death world had value in the wider galaxy. As they crested a ridge of ice, a new challenge presented itself. Before them stretched a vast crevasse, its depths lost in shadow and swirling snow. The gap was too wide to jump, and its edges looked treacherously unstable. Well, Sarah said, a hint of excitement in her voice despite the danger. Looks like it's time to get creative. Any ideas, team? The aliens looked at her, then at the crevasse, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. They were beginning to understand that with a human on their side, the impossible might just be possible after all. Unexpected alliance. The crevasse yawned before them, a gaping maw in the icy landscape that seemed to mock their progress. Sarah Chen stood at its edge, her mind racing through possible solutions, while her alien teammates huddled behind her, their varied physiologies all displaying signs of stress and fear. We can't possibly cross that. Zix hissed, his serpentine body coiling tightly. It's too wide, too deep. We should turn back, find another way. Sarah shook her head, her eyes never leaving the challenge before them. We can't afford to backtrack. We're on a time limit, remember. Besides, who knows what other obstacles we might run into if we try to go around. Pharaoh, the living metal being, stepped forward, his metallic body gleaming in the pale light. Perhaps I could stretch myself across, form a bridge of sorts. That's thinking outside the box, Pharaoh, Sarah said with an approving nod. But I'm not sure if you could maintain that form in this cold, and we can't risk losing you if something goes wrong. Blip bobbed nervously in the air. And maybe I could float across, carrying a rope. Good idea, Blip, but in this wind, you'd be blown off course in seconds, Sarah replied gently. As the team debated, a low growl rumbled from behind them. They turned as one to see a massive creature emerging from the swirling snow. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. A behemoth with 6 muscular legs, a body covered in thick white fur, and a head that seemed to be mostly mouth, filled with jagged icicle-like teeth. Glacial Ravager, Prism exclaimed, their crystalline body vibrating with fear. We must flee. But Sarah stood her ground, her eyes darting between the approaching predator and the crevasse behind them. In that moment, an idea struck her, a crazy, possibly suicidal idea, but one that just might work. Wait, she said, holding up a hand to stop her teammates from scattering. I have a plan, but I need you all to trust me and do exactly as I say. Can you do that? The aliens exchanged glances, then looked back at Sarah. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. All right, Sarah said, her voice calm. Unexpected alliance. Continued. Sarah's mind raced as she formulated her plan. The glacial ravager was closing in, its massive form shaking the ground with each step. She turned to her team, her eyes blazing with determination. Okay, here's what we're going to do, she said, her voice steady despite the dire situation. Pharaoh, I need you to create a smooth, reflective surface on the ice, right at the edge of the crevasse. Make it as large as you can. The metal being nodded, immediately stretching himself out into a thin, mirror-like sheet on the ice. Prism, Sarah continued, I need you to position yourself behind Pharaoh's surface. When I give the signal, refract as much light as you can through yourself and onto the mirror. We're going to create the biggest, brightest flash possible. The crystalline being hummed in understanding, moving into position. Grok, Zix, you're our muscle. When the Ravager is distracted, we need to push it off balance. Aim for its legs. The bear squid and the serpent nodded grimly, tensing for action. Blip, you're our ace in the hole. Float up high, out of sight. If our plan works, the Ravager might stumble into the crevasse. If it does, I need you to help slow its fall. Can you create a cushion of air beneath it? The Vern bobbed nervously but agreed, floating upward. Sarah took a deep breath, facing the oncoming predator. All right, everyone. On my mark. The glacial Ravager was mere meters away now, its hot breath visible in the frigid air. It reared up, ready to pounce. Now, Sarah yelled. In an instant, Prism channeled an intense beam of light onto Pharaoh's mirrored surface. The reflection was blinding, a miniature sun in the middle of the frozen wasteland. The Ravager roared in pain and confusion, rearing back on its hind legs. Push, Sarah commanded. Grok and Zix sprang into action, throwing their combined weight against the Ravager's front legs. Already off balance, the massive creature teetered on the edge of the crevasse. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed like the plan had failed. The Ravager's claws scrabbled at the ice, finding purchase. But then, with a thunderous crack, the edge of the crevasse gave way under its weight. As the Ravager fell, Blip swooped down, creating a swirling vortex of air that slowed its descent. The creature landed at the bottom of the crevasse with a muffled thud, dazed but alive. Sarah rushed to the edge, peering down. The Ravager was shaking its head, clearly stunned but not seriously injured. It looked up at them, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw something like respect in its alien eyes. "We did it," she breathed, turning to her team with a wide grin. "That was amazing teamwork, everyone." The alien cadets stared at her in shock and awe. Zix was the first to speak. That was incredible, Sarah. How did you come up with that plan so quickly?" Sarah shrugged, a bit embarrassed by the attention. "It's just something we learn on Earth. Use your environment, use your team's strengths, and always look for unconventional solutions." Pharaoh reformed into his humanoid shape, his metallic surface still gleaming. "I must admit, I had my doubts about humans, but you've proven yourself to be remarkably adaptable and quick-thinking." "Indeed." Prism chimed in, their crystalline form pulsing with excited energy. "Your ability to coordinate our diverse abilities in such a high-pressure situation is commendable." Grok rumbled in agreement, while Blip bobbed enthusiastically. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Sarah turned her attention back to their original problem. "We still need to cross this crevasse, though. Any ideas?" To her surprise, it was Zix who spoke up. "I think I might have a solution," the Slick said, slithering to the edge. "Sarah, your quick thinking inspired me. We've been looking at this all wrong. We don't need to go over the crevasse. We can go through it." Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. "Of course. The Ravager's fall has created a sort of ramp. If we're careful, we can climb down, cross at the bottom, and climb up the other side." The team set to work, using their various abilities to create a safe path down the icy slope. As they worked, Sarah couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. They were coming together, learning from each other, adapting to challenges in ways none of them could have done alone. Hours later, as they finally pulled themselves up the opposite side of the crevasse, exhausted but triumphant, Sarah realized something had changed. The alien cadets were no longer looking at her with skepticism or fear. There was respect in their eyes now, and something more: trust. As they continued their journey across the frozen expanse of Glacius Prime, Sarah felt a new sense of optimism. They still had a long way to go and undoubtedly more challenges to face. But now they faced them not as separate species forced to work together, but as a true team. The howling wind seemed a little less biting, the endless white a little less daunting. Sarah Chen, the human from Earth, had not only proven her own worth, but had shown her alien companions the true strength of humanity, not in brute force or advanced technology, but in adaptability, creativity, and the power of cooperation. As the distant shape of the research station finally appeared on the horizon, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They were going to make it, and in doing so, they were forging something greater than any of them could have imagined. A bridge between worlds, a testament to the potential of interspecies cooperation. The true test of Glacius Prime was far from over, but Sarah and her team were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they were proving that the galaxy was big enough for all of them, Deathworlders and aliens alike. The storm and the sacrifice. As the team pressed on towards the distant research station, the weather on Glacius Prime began to worsen. The wind, which had been a constant, biting presence, now howled with renewed fury. Snow whipped around them in blinding sheets, reducing visibility to mere meters. "We need to find shelter," Sarah shouted over the roar of the storm. "This blizzard is too dangerous to push through." But shelter, it seemed, was nowhere to be found. The flat, icy expanse offered no protection from the elements. As the team huddled together, trying to shield each other from the worst of the wind, Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't stay out in the open. The dropping temperature and fierce wind would spell certain doom for most of her alien companions. It was Prism who offered a solution, their crystalline voice barely audible over the storm. I think I can help, but it will be dangerous for me." Sarah turned to the quartz being, concern etched on her face. "What do you mean, Prism?" "I can create a shelter," Prism explained, "by reforming my body into a dome-like structure. It won't be comfortable, but it should protect us from the wind and help retain some heat. But what about you? Zix hissed, genuine worry in his voice. Won't that leave you exposed to the full force of the storm? Prism's crystalline form shimmered, a gesture Sarah had come to recognize as their equivalent of a shrug. It's a risk, yes, but it's one I'm willing to take. We're a team after all. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. This was true sacrifice. Prism was willing to put themselves in harm's way to protect the others. It was a level of dedication she hadn't expected from her alien teammates when they'd started this journey. All right, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But we do this carefully. Pharaoh, can you form a base layer, something to insulate Prism from the ice? The metal being nodded, stretching himself out into a thin but sturdy platform. Prism began to reshape their body, extending and flattening until they formed a glistening, translucent dome over the team. As soon as they were sheltered from the wind, the difference was palpable. The howling of the storm became a muffled roar, and the biting cold eased to a more manageable chill. Thank you, Prism, Sarah said, placing a gloved hand on the crystalline wall. We won't forget this. From outside their shelter, Prism's voice came, strained but determined. Just hurry. I don't know how long I can maintain this form in these conditions. The team huddled together for warmth, taking turns pressing against Pharaoh's metallic body, which radiated a comforting heat. As they waited out the storm, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. From a group of skeptical, often antagonistic individuals, they had become a true team, willing to sacrifice for each other. Hours passed, marked only by the endless howl of the wind and the occasional creak and groan from Prism's crystalline form. Sarah kept a watchful eye on their protector, noting with growing concern the way frost was beginning to form on the outer surface of the dome. Just as Sarah was about to suggest they risk continuing their journey, a horrible cracking sound split the air. Fissures began to spread across Prism's surface, branching out like lightning bolts across the sky. Prism, Sarah cried out, scrambling to her feet. Hold on, we're coming. But before they could act, the dome shattered. Razor-sharp shards of crystal exploded outward as Prism's form collapsed. The full fury of the storm rushed in, nearly knocking the team off their feet. Sarah's training kicked in. Grok, Pharaoh, gather the shards. Zix, Blip, help me find Prism's core. They worked frantically, fighting against the wind and cold. Finally, Sarah's hand closed around a small, pulsing crystal, Prism's central consciousness. I've got them, she shouted. We need to get out of here now. But as they looked around, the reality of their situation sank in. The storm had completely disoriented them. The research station, their only hope for survival, was lost in the swirling white void. Sarah clutched Prism's core to her chest, her mind racing. They were lost in a deadly storm. One of their team was critically injured, and their supplies were running dangerously low. It was the kind of situation that had earned Earth its Deathworld classification, the kind of situation humans had been overcoming for millennia. Listen up, team. Sarah's voice cut through the howling wind, steady and determined. We're not done yet. Prism sacrificed themselves to give us a chance, and we're not going to waste it. We're going to make it to that station, together. She looked at each of her alien companions, seeing not fear or doubt in their eyes, but resolve. They had come too far, overcome too much, to give up now. Blip, Sarah continued, her tactical mind formulating a plan. I need you to float up, as high as you can safely go. See if you can spot any lights, any sign of the station. The Vern nodded, stretching himself upward into the storm. Pharaoh, I need you to form a sled, something we can use to carry Prism's shards and move faster over the ice. The metal being immediately began to reshape himself, forming a streamlined sled with raised edges to protect its precious cargo. Grok, Zix, you're on pulling duty. Your strength and Zix's low center of gravity should help us move efficiently. The bear squid and the slick moved into position, ready to pull the makeshift sled. "And I'll navigate," Sarah finished. "I'll keep us on course and watch for any signs of the station or potential shelter." As they prepared to set out into the storm, Sarah felt a familiar mix of fear and exhilaration. This was what humans did best, facing impossible odds, adapting to harsh conditions, refusing to give up even when all hope seemed lost. "Remember," she said, her voice carrying to each member of her team, "we're not just fighting for ourselves now. We're fighting for Prism, for what they sacrificed. We're going to make it, not just because we have to, but because that's what we do. Humans, aliens, when we work together, there's nothing we can't overcome." With a nod to Grok and Zix, they set off into the howling white void. The storm raged around them, ice crystals stinging their exposed skin, and the wind threatening to knock them off their feet. But they pressed on, one step at a time, united in their determination to survive. As they battled through the blizzard, Sarah couldn't help but think that this moment of unity, of shared struggle and determination, was what the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy was truly about. It wasn't just about learning to fight or maintain order. It was about bringing different species together, learning from each other, and overcoming challenges that none of them could face alone. With Prism's core clutched tightly to her chest, Sarah led her team forward. The research station was out there somewhere, a beacon of hope in the frozen wasteland, and they were going to find it, no matter what Glacius Prime threw at them next. The storm howled, the wind bit, and the cold seeped into their bones. But Sarah Chen and her alien teammates pushed on, a testament to the indomitable spirit of life in all its forms. They were more than cadets now. They were pioneers, forging a path of cooperation and mutual understanding in the harshest of conditions. And as they struggled through the blinding snow, a faint light began to appear on the horizon. A glimmer of hope in the endless white. Triumph and new understanding. The faint light on the horizon grew stronger as Sarah and her team pressed forward through the relentless storm. With each step, the hope of reaching the research station and safety became more tangible. But the journey was far from over, and Glacius Prime had one final challenge in store for them. As they crested a ridge of ice, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed across the frozen surface, a network of fissures expanding rapidly in all directions. "The ice is breaking up," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "We need to move now." But moving quickly on the fragmented ice proved nearly impossible. Each step was a gamble, the ground threatening to give way at any moment. Grok and Zix struggled to pull the sled containing Prism's shards, while Blip darted back and forth, trying to scout a safe path forward. Sarah's mind raced, assessing their options. The research station was visible now, a squat fortified structure silhouetted against the storm. But between them and safety lay a treacherous field of breaking ice. "Pharaoh," Sarah called out, an idea forming. "Can you extend yourself, create a bridge for us?" The metal being nodded, his form liquefying and stretching out across the fractured ice. But the extreme cold was taking its toll. Pharaoh's normally smooth surface was becoming brittle, hairline cracks appearing as he strained to maintain the bridge. "It's too far," Pharaoh grunted, his voice strained. "I can't reach all the way to stable ground." Sarah looked at her team, saw the fear and exhaustion in their eyes. They had come so far, overcome so much. She refused to let it end here, not when they were so close. "All right, new plan," she said, her voice steady despite the dire situation. "Blip, I need you to create as much lift as you can. Grok, Zix, when I give the signal, I want you to throw the sled as far as you can towards the station. Pharaoh will provide a launch platform and extend as far as he can. I'll make the jump with Prism's core." Her teammates stared at her in shock. "But Sarah," Zix hissed, "that's impossible. Even if you make the jump, you'll never survive the landing on this ice." Sarah managed a small smile. "Maybe for most species, but remember, I'm from a death world. We humans are tougher than we look." Before anyone could protest further, Sarah nodded to Gruck and Zix. With a mighty heave, they launched the sled containing Prism's shards towards the station. Blip's air current caught it, carrying it safely over the breaking ice. "Now," Sarah yelled. She sprinted forward, Prism's core clutched tightly to her chest. Pharaoh formed a smooth ramp, and Sarah felt the cold metal beneath her boots as she ran. At the last possible moment, she leaped. For a heart-stopping moment, Sarah was airborne, the howling wind threatening to knock her off course.